Southeast Asians gangs had their origins in the waves of refugees that came from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos after the communist forces came into power. An important distinction between refugees and migrants is that migrants have a choice of leaving their home countries or staying there, albeit in poverty. The typical Mexican-American immigrant comes to the United States on his or her own accord to find work. Immigrants can plan their move and take resources with them. Refugees are usually persecuted to the point of having to leave, or are simply made to leave their country of origin. As a result, they tend to be poorer and less prepared to move than migrants. This was the case with the Southeast Asian refugees who came to San Diego. A total of approximately 50,000 of the 900,000 Southeast Asian refugees who fled their home countries settled in San Diego. The refugees came in 3 waves. The first wave occurred between 1975 and 1979 and was made up principally of the Vietnamese who had either worked with the Americans or were fleeing communism. The refugees tended to have greater resources, be better adjusted to urban living, and be more educated than those in the next 2 waves. The second wave of refugees, from 1979 to 1982, consisted of a combination of Chinese Vietnamese, Cambodians, Hmong, and Lao, better known as boat people. This group suffered terribly, with estimates of up to half of their original number dying in the attempt to escape. Southeast Asian gangs. Researchers and police alike speculate that Southeast Asians gangs band together to protect themselves from the other gangs. The Southeast Asians youths who settled in East San Diego were bullied by both Mexican-American and African-American gangs. Not only did the Mexican-American and African-American gangs serve as a source of persecution, they also served as role models. The tiny Oriental Crips, Oriental Boy Soldiers, and Oriental Killer Boys make up the 3 major San Diego gangs composed primarily of Southeast Asian youth. While the names make overly general reference to ethnicity, the gang members are primarily from a single group. The Oriental Boy Soldiers are essentially Khmer, and the tiny Oriental Crips and Oriental Killer Boys are mainly Lao. When they started forming gangs, the Southeast Asians youths did so for protection. Since the other gangs had been bullying them, they were the target for retaliation. There has been a long-standing feud between the Mexican-American ESD gang and the Oriental Boy Soldiers. From police data, it appears that the ESD gang is a recurrent victim of attacks by Oriental Boy Soldiers. But interviews with police investigators showed that the Oriental Boy Soldiers really were not sure how to go about reporting a drive-by shooting to the police. Ironically, while ESD willingly reported attacks by gangs like the Oriental Boy Soldiers, Mexican-American gang members are not as cooperative with the police when battling other Mexican-American gangs. Gang routines and structures. The same routines and structures that characterize non-Southeast Asian gangs are also typical of the Southeast Asian gangs. The following interview with a Lao member of the tiny Oriental Crips shows that his gang is organized like the other gangs in San Diego. The organization works this way. First on the top are OGs, original gangsters. They just kick it. They have been through everything, and they don't want to be involved anymore. They usually have families. They get all respect. The next level is the juniors. They are the ones that are out there gang-banging, robbing, and taking parts off cars. They have been in the gang for a couple of years, but nobody is over the age of 18. This is because we are one of the newer gangs. Next are the new bodies. They are real young, like around age 6. Then the juniors, they do a little bit of bang-bang stuff. In a sense, the whole gang is together, but everyone does their own thing. My gang is best known for shooting and stealing cars. They are smart, and they don't get caught much. The big money comes from the OG's connection with the mafia. The older, more powerful members can ask a junior to get some money from stealing. The money is given to the older group. It is a trade-off of respect to the older members. The organization sounds virtually identical to that described by every other gang member. Given the role models for gangs, it should not be too surprising that the gang structure is the same. Likewise, in describing a typical gang day, the Southeast Asian gangs sound virtually identical to the other gangs. The West Coast Ladies. Another interesting group that developed with the Oriental Killer Boys is a female Lao group calling themselves the West Coast Ladies. The name West Coast was most likely borrowed from the African-American West Coast Crips. Given the possible association of the Oriental Killer Boys with the African-American gang neighborhood Crips, it is interesting that this title was chosen. The girls affiliated with other gangs usually take on the name of the male group with whom they are an adjunct. The West Coast Ladies had the distinction of being on record in San Diego as the only known all-female group involved in a drive-by shooting. The following case describes the drive-by. Two Lao girls arranged to meet in a parking lot of an apartment complex to discuss an argument over some prank phone calls one had been receiving. One of the girls was affiliated with the West Coast Ladies gang, an exclusively Lao female gang. She was currently dating the former boyfriend of the girl she came to meet. The West Coast Ladies girl brought 7 of her fellow gang members with her. When the two girls met in the parking lot, rather than settling the argument, they began fighting, with the 8 gang girls jumping on the other girl. 2 males broke up the fight, and the gang girls left. As they left, the girl who had been assaulted threw a rock at the car containing the West Coast Ladies. The gang girl who had initially been in conflict with the other girl told the driver of the car to go back to the parking lot. When the car returned to the parking lot, the gang girl fired 2 shots from a pistol at the girl standing next to her car. 1 bullet missed, and the other hit the car. The conflict was a personal one that involved a gang member, but the gang member brought her homegirls with her so that the incident became a gang one. Thoughts on Southeast Asian gangs by other gangs. Interviews with gang members from various ethnic backgrounds show that stereotypes about Asians were clearly held. The following samples illustrate the view of Southeast Asian gangs. African American Crip. The Orientals are known for having real heavy equipment like 9mm Uzis and stuff. They have the high-powered guns. The Long Beach 20 are really known for it. It's just a known fact that you don't mess with them. Mexican American East Side Brown Angels. The Oriental gangs are more aggressive. They have more guns. My gang thinks they are wannabes and they are trying to prove themselves.